Now to our third speaker, Dov Seidman. 20 years ago, he founded a company called LRN to help companies cope with increasingly complex legal and regulatory requirements and at the same time foster ethical cultures. LRN neatly unites Dov's education as first a philosopher, then a lawyer, but it's a business he's running, and he wants me to point that out. He, too, is an author of the book, How? Why We Do Anything Means Everything. Here to talk about managers and external forces, Dov Seidman.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Martin, I just learned that I share with you that my father also was from Vienna, and I grew up with a Viennese mentality in my home, and it's therefore particularly meaningful to stand here before you and have my father's memory in mind and heart, because his circumstances were probably shared with yours. So thank you for having me. I should also say that I rarely speak, and this is blinking zero, so if you want to be strict and severe with the time, as you said yesterday, somebody's got to give you the 15 minutes, so I want to be respectful of punctuality. I rarely speak to an audience that's had wine before they listen to me, and I have had no wine, so I will find a way to connect with each and every one of you. Oops, let me go back. In 1967, think of the prescience of Peter Drucker to offer this profound distinction between doing the next thing right and the next right thing. I know the world is changing fast, but it's also being reshaped. And it's being reshaped faster than I think we're able to reshape ourselves and our institutions. Machines can be programmed with big data to do the next thing right. And they're outperforming us. I think it's time to forfeit to machines and say, you can do the next thing right. But only human beings can do the next right thing. I think understanding this and connecting with Peter Drucker's meaning that the next right thing had moral content. It's not what you can and can't do, but what you should and should not do. I think the key to dealing with the particular forces of a reshaped world is to understand the world in terms of this distinction, and also understand the behaviors that we need to exhibit institutionally and as leaders and individuals to give this distinction reality in life. And I'm passionate to devote my career to this cause. Business, as we know, is about freedom. That's why it's called free markets and free enterprise. So I want to describe the world through the lens of freedom. And I think that there's not just income inequality, there's a new, perhaps more fundamental inequality. I call it a freedom inequality. People got freedom from Gaddafi. 80 million citizens were able in 17 days to get freedom from Mubarak, and then the military, and they're still striving. But LinkedIn gives us freedom from recruiters, and travel sites, freedom from travel agents. DVRs give us freedom from networks forcing us to watch commercials. Amazon, freedom from the neighborhood store. Chat rooms, freedom from corporate communications, doing all the talking. So easily we can cast off whatever captures consumers, citizens, or employees. We're able to create freedom from authority, hierarchy, and formal and traditional structures of power and control like never before. And now we have all these people who for the first time are experiencing freedom from, which is created in more revolutionary, tearing things down ways. And now that they have this freedom from, they are more acutely aware that they don't have the freedom we all cherish more. Not freedom from, but freedom to live a meaningful life, to be happy, to speak, to spend some money to innovate and not get punished if we don't get a return. Freedom to be yourself, freedom to collaborate, to innovate. And we know that from the beginning of time, freedom from is created by casting off, but freedom to can only be enabled with proper governance, leadership rooted in moral, not just formal authority, institutions that exist to protect these freedoms, and then enable them. And now the hard work remains to give freedom, the true freedom of free enterprise, a chance. We also live in a time where, because of this phenomena, wealth and capital is still concentrating, as we saw before. But power is becoming more diffuse and democratized, and transparency is everywhere. So wealth is concentrated, power is democratized, and we can easily see into things, and people tend to care about that which they can see and more easily do something about it. One vegetable vendor in Tunisia was able to create a revolution towards freedom with 7 friends. We now live in a world where we can make history, record history, amplify history in a moment. One banker can lose $2 billion at his desk and create volatility in global markets. You see, power has gone to the individuals, and individuals can affect so many others so far away in ways he or she could not before. If you think this revolutionary spirit and ethic is confined to how citizens see the world, every one of these companies had to recall a major strategic product launch, a new pricing model or incentive, because of a consumer revolt that happened in a flash, within a week. Netflix, a video streaming company of the United States that we're all aware of, they were doing so well, they were counting subscribers, they were adding subscribers faster than they could count, and they decided, how about a little price increase? In the next 48 hours, 800,000 of their subscribers in unison pointed in the same direction and left. When was the last time we saw 800,000 consumers engage in collective action? Now, to his credit, Reed Hastings said, I guess I'm in a new world. I'm going to apologize, and I'm going to reconnect with humility and start to have two-way conversations with the marketplace, and next time we want to increase prices, we will try to enlist and convince, because we now live in a world where we can get our behaviors right even when we make a mistake. This is Martha Payne. She's 11 years old today. I encountered her when she was 9. She didn't like the food in her British school, not because it wasn't gourmet, and I know that British cuisine is a bit of an oxymoron, and I can say that here. But she didn't like the food because she didn't think it was nutritious. So she took her father's camera with his permission, and she started to photograph the malnutritious food, and she started blogging about it. The school went to the school board and shut her down. They got permission to shut down her blog. So the famous chef, Jamie Oliver, came to her defense. And then 1 million people supported her blog. The school reversed its policy. It's now serving gourmet, nutritious food. Children all over the world have caused their school to do the same thing. They have raised money, and the excess money is going to malnutrition children in Malawi. If you go onto her blog, do you know what it says? I am a future workplace leader. She sees herself as a leader. Ladies and gentlemen, she can force people in power to have a two-way conversation, and she's 9 years old. And these are the people that we need to capture their hearts and minds. If I had to sum things up, the world has gone from connected to interconnected to hyperconnected to interdependent. Interdependency is a moral reality. It's a world in which I affect you and you affect me in ways I couldn't before and very far away. It's a world in which we rise and fall together, and therefore, there can only be one strategy in an interdependent world. The only strategy in an interdependent world is not complicated at all, but it's very difficult. It's to forge healthy interdependencies, meaningful, enduring, lasting, rich interdependencies, so we rise together and avoid falling. And healthy interdependencies, as we know in our friendships, in our marriages, in our teams, healthy interdependencies always come down to something very simple: behavior. How we relate, how we treat, how we make decisions, how fair are we? Behavior that is inspired in and guided by values. And that's why I think we're in the era of behavior. And when I say behavior, I don't mean just do the right thing, of course. I mean every tweet is a behavior, every Facebook post is a behavior, collaboration is a behavior, innovation is a behavior, sharing an idea in a meeting is a behavior, a rich customer experience is a behavior. All the ways in which human beings are, manifest, behave. That's what I mean by the era of behavior. If you ask CEOs, this was a major study done, what behaviors do you want? Look at what they asked for: collaboration, communication, creativity, flexibility. If you tripled people's salaries, you would not get more communication and creativity necessarily. If you said to two people, you go in the room and do not emerge, especially since you're from different cultures, until you learn to respect each other and therefore collaborate, you won't get it. We are asking for things that machines can't do. We are asking for elevated behaviors from people, things that there's no amount of carrots and sticks. We can use carrots and sticks to shift behavior, to get somebody to come earlier to work and work longer. We could put a product on sale and make you buy now and not later, more, not less. But what elevates people is a sense of purpose, mission, and values. And for the first time, we are asking employees and consumers and customers to behave in elevated ways. I think that we have moved from an industrial economy where we wanted to hire hands, we wanted a hired hand, to Peter Drucker's knowledge economy where we were hiring brains. Now I think we are going to a human economy where we are hiring hearts. There's a Talmudic expression that words and deeds from the heart, where values reside, enter the heart. And we are now asking for behaviors that we can only have. You can't collaborate if you truly embrace and respect someone's dignity, for example. So we are now asking for people's hearts. It's no accident that Chevron is the human energy company, that Dow is the human element, Cisco is the human network. Samsung is competing with Apple by saying designed for humans, human flourishing. Let's speak human. One company after another is telling the world, work here, buy from us, invest in us because of who we are in our humanity. That implies they weren't human before. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This is just marketing. But marketing departments are exquisite at putting their finger on the social nerve, on where society is. And they are crossing the Rubicon, if you will, with their companies by declaring and proclaiming the humanity of their organizations. And now the hard work, indeed, the competitive stakes of the 21st century is to translate the proclamation of humanity into corporate practices, policies, leadership, and individual behaviors. And even though this is the work, I think there's a big way to go and a far way to go from saying it and doing it, because right now we have a terrible jobs crisis in the world, but we also have a careers crisis. People who have a job who do not feel that they're on a meaningful journey towards a thriving career, because worldwide, especially in Europe and the United States, around 7 to 8 employees are not engaged on the job. They are leaning out as opposed to leaning in. 2 out of those 7 or 8 are actively sabotaging their company. They're on Facebook saying some pretty awful things. I think Peter Drucker would consider this leadership and management malpractice, to have so many people not creating innovations and increased productivity so they would make jobs for their friends and cousins and uncles, etc. And not just employees, consumers are equally detached. And they cite the number one reason they're not loyal to brands with whom they shop is broken promises, the lack of the kind of do the next right thing. So where do we go if you accept that the world is moving to an interdependent world? And David Hume said that the moral imagination diminishes with distance. There is no distance in an interconnected world, so morality and values and principles can't go over there. It comes back in to everything. That is a rejection not of a world of business that was immoral, not at all. The world of business is full of good people who've created more prosperity and human progress and pulled more people out of poverty than any model I've ever seen, and we all know, democratic capitalism. But this is a refutation of not immoral, but amoral business, the idea that the business of business is just business, and that the only responsibility of an organization is shareholder returns. I've never met an employee who flies out of bed for the short term or long term to just create money for shareholders. Now, I think that we have a systems problem, but the good news is that business is great at scaling and systematizing whatever it wants. ERP, HRIS, TQM, Kaizen, Six Sigma, CSR, CRM. What all these acronyms stand for is business wanted to do something in a scaled-up way, and it created a disciplined, systematic approach. What's left is to create a more systematic, scaled-up approach to humanity. We have to get in touch with the forces that bear on behavior. Governance bears on behavior. The rules, the money, the policies, the hierarchy, the objectives bears on behavior. The pay structures. Culture bears on behavior. Who are we? How do things really happen around this place? What happened? Who were we on our best day and why? And leadership bears on behavior. Is it command and control? Is it connect and collaborate? Is it transparent? Is it hoarding? And right now, all 3 models were more attuned to the industrial age and perhaps the knowledge economy, but not for the human economy. But worse, they're not in harmony. I know enlightened CEOs who say to somebody, I trust you to innovate, and the person flies off to innovate, and then they got to get 3 signatures to spend €8 to innovate, so the left hand took away what the right hand giveth. If you love your company, go on Facebook and defend the company, and then there's a social media policy from the compliance department that says, don't you dare go on Facebook. So we need to start to create a more harmonized approach. You remember when Bill Gates, Microsoft won, people thought that it was Word against WordPerfect, the battle of the killer apps. Bill Gates was really wise about the future. He said, if I build Windows, an operating system, my killer app, Word, can work with Excel and PowerPoint and email. And we keep asking for these killer apps, collaboration, innovation, creativity, all these killer apps. But we have to start to work on a trust-filled, values-inspired human operating system that can fire up these killer apps. I think that's the work that remains for us to do. It presents significant leadership implications. Leaders have been in the business of giving people the answer. If it's football, this is the play we're going to run. If it's military, that's the hill we're going to take. If it's business, we have the vision, we have the strategy. You guys execute and implement. But now we're in a world where everybody is participating and speaking, and we are asking for so much judgment and human qualities and capacities from people. So leadership needs to go on a journey from giving people the answer to asking questions that allow people to figure out what the right answer is. They need to get into the context business, to create a context where people have meaning and a sense of purpose, and they know why we're getting out of bed. And they have to create a culture that if they're inspired to pursue that, there's less fear and more trust and more values to guide the way. So we can talk more in the discussion about what this means for leadership. But I want to conclude by making a comment on where shareholders fit into this human economy. And I think the best answer to where shareholders fit comes from the Johnson & Johnson credo. In the 1930s, when Johnson & Johnson went public, General Johnson was their only shareholder at the time. And he decided that he needed to write a credo that would guide this company in the ups and downs of the world. And he talked about our first responsibilities to the doctors, patients, and nurses of the world. Let's make the world a healthier place. And then this document talks about money. But it says if we live according to these principles, our shareholders should make a fair return, not will. He understood the profound difference between doing something and making money, because we're capitalists, versus doing something in order to make money. And how we scale up the distinction of doing something for a customer or for the world and understanding that we need to make money versus doing something in order to make money, I think is full of nuance, but equally full of deep truth. And I think the last job of leaders is to create environments where people are getting out of bed to do something and they understand that they need profits to keep doing it. Now, the world is full of forces. We can't control them, but we can control how we do things, how we behave, how we relate, and how we fix mistakes when we make them, because we're all far from perfect. And I think, therefore, most organizations and leaders are on a journey to start to not just say they're human, but to fully become human. Thank you very much.